What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about just how good could Resident Evil 4's remake be. And in this video, I want to try to talk a little bit about the reception and how people think of the original, right, RE4, compared to this game. Can this game actually be better than it? Which is a tough question, but also to honestly get it out of the way early, all subjective. How good you think 4 is versus how good you think Remake is, totally up to you. And it's a subjective question for sure. But, you look back, and I actually had forgotten about this. Well, of course, we all know, right, how good RE4 is. And we also can think back at how many people really, really liked it. One of the better games, right, of all time, a horror classic, all these kind of hot words. I actually didn't know the review score. I didn't know it was as high as it was. It's a 96. Now, I'm not like a super big review guy myself. Well, firstly, I don't give review scores out on my channel. And also, I'll look at reviews. I'll see what people have to say. But I tend to make my own opinions based off of the gameplay, what I personally see, not if the game got an 8.7, whatever that even means. But this game, 9.6. So the metrics back up the talk, around town that this game, RE4, is one of the better games of all time. Factually, based on scores, it is one of the best games, literally of all time. Again, how much you go into scores, it's up to you. But now, for this remake, there are things that are changed. You can watch any extended length, and as these past couple days, as these past couple of weeks have gone on, we've started to see some mini kind of clips, some gameplay segments, right? I think there was like an 8-9 minute clip going around, and there's a lot of channels that'll do comparisons where they'll look at the scene back with the original and then they'll look at it now. And there are differences. There's sometimes slight dialogue changes. Obviously the visuals are different, but you could argue in terms of how you're trying to do the visuals now. There's some characters in 4's remake that they look a lot better, but they kind of take a different art approach to it. Like the character's going for a different vibe than it was in the original. So then the reason I bring these up, I'm not saying these are like hugely negative things. I do think, and we've talked about this before on my channel, there are people that have talked about these differences, and a lot of them, to me, specifically the gameplay changes, I think are pretty okay. In my opinion, when you do a remake, you're remaking it, you're doing that game, but you're making it for the era or the year or the console generation or whatever that you're currently in. Now, I'm not saying the whole modern audiences thing, right? Like we're trying to make it for a modern audience. Normally when that's said, primarily with movies, it tends to be like a kiss of death. I do think they've thrown around that phrase with this game, but every time I've seen it, I do think they're talking more about the gameplay, that it's more user-friendly, the quick time events, the knife fight, all these different things that are gameplay heavy. They're changing it. They're saying, well, people nowadays don't really like it. I think when they say that, they're talking more about the gameplay changes, which is interesting because if I go with my gut, or if I'm going with my gut right now, I would say that this remake game won't be better than the original. I think nostalgia, I think the power of what this game was back then, I think that's so powerful that it's kind of untouched. You'll never really be able to beat it. With that being said, though, there's a lot of positive changes, at least right now, that I can kind of locate with this game. The biggest thing for me is not necessarily going to be the changes with the gameplay. It's going to be the changes with the story. And again, I'm not talking about these massive, they're not going to tell a completely different story here, but these small little things where, again, you look it up, the differences between one scene back then and then a scene now, they are slightly off. Not necessarily in a bad way, not necessarily in a good way. It's up for you to judge. But what it shows us right now, because obviously you can't judge the full game, it's not out yet, but you can tell that maybe every cutscene, right, every kind of cinematic is going to have it's just going to be a little bit different than what we had. Now, again, does that make it better? Does that make it worse? Well, that's what's up in the air. That's what we don't know. I think everything else is probably going to be for the better. So it's actually kind of tough making the call. Can this game be better than the original? I think it can. I think in a lot of ways it will. Is that enough to balance out if the other changes, some of the more dialogue things or character looks or whatever, if that's a little bit weaker because you're kind of messing with perfection, however people want to rationalize it, that may be on the lower end, but then everything else is on the high end. Maybe it's exactly, equal to the original. Again, I'm not necessarily talking about review scores. I mean, that I suppose will be the first indicator, right? If this game gets like a 92, are people going to say, oh, well, there you go, it's not as good? At the same time, I would say review scores now, games don't get I think the 96s era is long gone, right? The highest games nowadays over the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years, 91 to 93, maybe 94. It's been a long time, I think, since there was like a Metacritic game that got in the mid to high 90s. Again, it's extremely rare. And to throw it out one final time, remember, I don't really care. It is just an early metric you can look at before the game comes out. You can see what people start to say. Regardless, I'm extremely excited for this game, and I get more excited every single day. I really, really liked 4. Talked about it before. I think it has a very different feel from a lot of games in the horror genre or just gaming in general. And then also I think it definitely feels a little bit different in the Resident Evil world as well. So I'm excited regardless. I don't need this game to be better or worse, than that. I just want to play it. I just want to enjoy it in our current year of 2023. Thought this would be a fun video though to kind of discuss. Let me know what you think. Make sure you guys are subscribed, bell icon turned on. I hope to see you all on the next one.